let's get into it. So I think what we are here to talk about today is probably, to most of you at least, manufacturers here in the room, quite familiar in terms of carbon emerging as a metric that matters in procurement and in supplier and customer relationships. Because basically what we are seeing is that while fewer companies, for example, here in Europe, are subject to regulations such as the CSRD, we have thousands of large enterprises globally that have committed to SBTi targets or net zero targets by 2030 or 2040. And as the sort of pressure on them to decarbonize intensifies, and also as most of them are realizing that 70 to 90% of their emissions sit in their scope 3, they are forced to look to their supply chain to get actual data that will help them take action. And that's why you, as a manufacturer, might be seeing an increase in product carbon footprint requests for the products that you produce. And I think what we are seeing is a pretty loud and clear signal that while it might not be a lot of companies yet that are asking about this, the ones that are asking about it are the ones that typically really matter. So the really big ones are the ones who are spending a lot of money in your shop. We have been talking to a lot of manufacturers. Here are two of the quotes, things that we're hearing around how this is starting to matter. And while it might just be 10% of the supplier criteria, it might be the difference between winning or losing a deal. But just because this is something that's important and it's emerging does not mean that it is easy. We hear a lot, and also saw it now, around this sort of data challenges. Typically what we hear is there are a lot of data requests back and forth. A lot of the tools out there have several months, if not years, of sort of learning curves to get started. And I think overall, it's clear, at least the companies we speak to, that this is something that's way too slow and way too expensive to really scale it up. So yeah, that's why we've built PCF Studio, to really provide manufacturers with a way to calculate PCFs that is a lot easier and a lot faster. And we've sort of tried to build it around some of these challenges that we've identified. Also came up now around having the right data to get started. So building features that help you start even though your data is not perfect, and also features that speed up finding the right emission factors, applying the right methodology through every steps, by still applying a methodology that is ISO 14067 certified, or very soon. We're in the very final stages of getting it ISO certified. But yeah, by now I'm sure you're kind of keen to see this in action. So I'll hand over to Chloe for a live demo of PCF.
Yes. Thanks so much, Isabella. So just to make the demo a little bit more relatable, I'm going to step into a slightly different persona. So hello again, I'm a sustainability manager at an electrical component manufacturing company based here in Berlin. And a key customer of ours, who are washing machine manufacturers, have actually just asked for all of their suppliers to start providing PCFs. So this has gone from a nice to have to an actual contractual requirement quite quickly. Now, I've done one PCF before alongside a consultant. I wouldn't really feel confident starting from scratch on my own. I'm starting to explore some new tools on the market. So today I want to build a first PCF for one of our small electric motors, and ideally we would scale this approach across our full product portfolio. So we'll be looking at a simple 4-step process on how to move from my existing bill of materials towards an outputted PCF. So with that being said, let's pull up my bill of materials. Let me go ahead and grab that. I did a little bit of scouring and scavenging on my end in our ERP system to manage to get some of that data. So here's my bill of materials. As we can see, we have some description. So this is the different components that are going into the electric motor, essentially. This is what my product's composed of. We then also have the actual material that the component is made from, followed by the quantity. We have some mixed units over here, some mostly in kilograms as the unit of measurement, a couple as pieces as well, so number of items essentially. We also have a scrap percentage, or essentially a waste percentage, which would account for the raw material lost during the manufacturing process. So for example, if we steal offcuts, if a sheet is machined and cut into, for example. And we also have our final important column, which would be our origin. So this is essentially our location. So this is where my suppliers are based. So the sourcing location of my raw materials. So this is the bill of materials that I'd love to start with today as my foundation. Maybe as a side note, with some other tools that I've been exploring so far, as many of you also have been, getting my BOM into the right format was incredibly time consuming. So, Isabella, could you share a bit more on how PCF Studio handles that?
Yeah, happy to. So I think this is also, like we saw in the poll, one of the sort of key bits that take a lot of time in terms of the data formatting. So yeah, important to note here is that the BOM upload is very flexible in terms of the column names and also in terms of certain missing data. So you can see a couple of the fields here are missing. We have a couple of different units, etc. And these are things that we've built into the tool so that you can get started and sort of upload the data without running into any issues.
Mhm. And maybe on a related note on the BOM, my inputs aren't always in English for the descriptions. Is this something that PCF Studio can take care of for me?
Yeah, so you do not need to. We support around 47 different languages. It's available on our website. We can also link to that. But we support 40 different languages, which means that you do not need to translate it to English first in order for the tool to be able to pick up what the different line items are.
Great, then with that in mind, I'm going to use this bill of materials as is. Let's jump straight into the studio and start calculating. So before we get into the details, my customer has asked for a cradle to gate scope. So this would be my raw emissions, sorry, not raw emissions, emissions from raw material extraction to when my assembled product would basically leave my manufacturing site. So that's important to note in terms of boundaries and then also functional units. So we sell our motors as single units. For you, you should choose what constitutes a single unit. But let's dive straight into it. So we're going to start off with our product name, electric motor, and manufactured in Berlin. We can throw in Germany too. And our year is 2026. We can keep it to this year. So that looks all good. Some basic details. Let's continue in the studio. So over here, we now can add our bill of materials data. So there are three ways to share information on what goes into my product. Maybe starting bottom up, you can do a manual entry, which would be a line by line component or packaging item, slightly more awkward input method. Or even better, we could upload our bill of materials that we already have on hand. And as the final option, we could also start off with a template. So we could essentially generate an AI template for data gap filling. I know that this is a pain point based on the survey for many of you. Supply engagement is infamously hard, and it is common to have some component gaps from your suppliers. So we have a great option here to fill in any missing data points if needed. So this utilizes AI alongside the product name that we just inputted to fill gaps in our component and packaging list. So for some of the motors in our range, I'm definitely going to use this. We have quite a few gaps in the data. But for today, let's go ahead and use our upload method. So we're just going to pop our bill of materials in here. And this is what we had a look at earlier. Maybe while that's loading, I can also see that we have an ISO tag here. There's a verification here in the studio. I'd love for us to dig into that further. So Isabella, could you maybe share a bit more about what that means in terms of data security on your end?
Yeah, happy to. So we know that this is also a always something that's sensitive, when you're sort of uploading your bill of materials or sharing what goes into your product. So a couple of things important to know here is first of all, we never store any of the files that you upload. They are deleted straight after we've processed them. And we also don't use any of the inputs for, training an AI model or similarly. And we also, of course, don't share them with any third party, any other customer or similarly. And we're also ISO 27001 and SOC 2 certified.
Great. Then my data is safe over here. I can see that from my original bill of materials, we have some descriptions that have been pulled out. We have our weights and quantities, the location of my suppliers. We have a couple of highlighted points here to maybe just convert across these pieces per item to an actual kilogram unit. So let's have a look at this. we had 2 carbon brushes. So let's go ahead and estimate that weight. No need to exit the studio and do some research and come back. We can just do this essentially natively within the studio. So let's go ahead and use this weight. We can convert these across two, just that we resolve all of our little warnings over here. Let's estimate the weight out here. And sounds good. Let's go ahead and use this weight too. So we have no highlighted fields anymore. All of our data has been extracted. Really nice to see that we have also this transport column. So Climatiq will automatically route my supplier's location to my manufacturing site in terms of the most likely transport mode. We have a couple of options here. And then also my scrap percentage was extracted out. So this looks good. Maybe let's just throw in some packaging. So I'm going to go ahead and add a row, add my packaging in. We package our small electric motors in wooden crates. We source this locally in Berlin. So let's go ahead and add that in. These are around 1 kilogram each. And Berlin is where we source these and they get delivered to us by road. So looks good. Let's go ahead and continue with our PCF calculation. So next up, we have some manufacturing inputs. So let's have a look at the different options. There's some water inputs. We don't have this on hand, but if you do know about the water used in your manufacturing process, you can go ahead and throw that in here. We also have the total energy consumed. So this would be our product level manufacturing energy data. Now, on the product level side, very few companies have product level data. We personally aren't there yet. I don't have this data, and that's totally okay. So we're going to use the process estimation today. I'm a lot more familiar with the process that we go through rather than that product level energy input. So we're going to rather base our calculation on the manufacturing process itself. So we'll use the AI estimation to generate some of the most likely manufacturing processes for my product, for my electric motor, and work from that to fill the gaps. So let's go ahead and generate an estimate. It's now analyzing the product name and thinking about what does one go through to actually assemble and manufacture this motor. So casting, we absolutely do the lamination, winding. This is not a familiar process to me, so I'm going to go ahead and remove that. Machining and assembly. So I'm happy with starting off with these 5 processes. Let's go ahead and add them in. As we can see, we now have all of our process names that have been detailed out, all 5 of them, followed by the estimation of electricity in kilowatt hours, the fuel types, and as we get more data in, we can always just replace it, add more details on the fuel types, add the exact kilowatt hours, and other optional fields like is my energy renewable, and it can add that granularity on top as the data becomes uncovered. As we know, it's not always accessible to have all the data perfect before starting, so it's great to just kick off with some gap filling. I won't let this be a blocker to calculating a PCF for me. So let's use these. Go ahead and click calculate. We're going to compile our results, and already we are at the results dashboard. So let's have a look for our electric motor in Berlin. We have our total emissions. So this is our kilograms of CO2 equivalent for the production. We also have a full impact breakdown. So I can see where do my emissions really lie? Where are my carbon hotspots? How can I be more mindful of implementing some reduction strategies? So I can really see across the main operations where that carbon mainly lies. Following that, we also have the product weight. So this would be with my packaging, followed by a carbon intensity. So this would be my total emissions divided by the product weight to get how much carbon is being emitted per kilogram of this motor. So lots of information here. Before we unpack the results further, Ankita, do you want to just walk us through what happened in the background here? How did we get from my bill of material to these results?
Yeah, sure. So the way that this works is that when you upload the bill of materials and you have each of the components listed, our very intelligent mapping agent runs in the background to map all of the component names to the closest emission factor match that it can have from our database of over 1 million emission factors that are available on Climatiq. And these are then calculated in the backend by our PCF API, which then returns these results in like a breakdown format. And the same thing happens with the energy, the manufacturing process energy estimations as well, where the calculations run in the background, powered by our API, and is presented on this results page. So if you click on each of the components, you can also get to see each of the emission factors that have been matched to each of the components. Also the data quality scores. If you want, you can also overwrite those results and change those emission factors. So yeah, you can also play around and see what works best for your use case.
Great, then let's dig into the mapping agent mappings that you just mentioned. Maybe let's look at the rotor component. So if we open this up, this is one of our components. Came from Germany, essentially. We have our waste percentage. We have the actual total emissions in kilograms of CO2 equivalent for this exact component on a component level, plus the breakdown from a production, transport, and waste perspective. So we can also see where is this carbon coming from. We can also see the mapped emission factor. Also linked, we can see the full source trail, essentially, of the emission factor, all of the metadata associated with it that's been verified, normalized. So we can really trace back all of this detail associated with my mapped emission factor. I see there's also the ability to change the factor. So as Ankita mentioned, I know Climatiq works with a wide range of emissions databases. So maybe, Isabella, do you want to just walk us through where this data is coming from, specifically how it's being matched to the components? Yeah, I'd love to hear a bit more about how this works.
Yeah, happy to. So like Ankita mentioned, we are basically matching this against emission factors from our emission factor database. And for those of you who are not familiar, it's around 125 verified data sets that we have in there. So we have a team of climate scientists who are essentially responsible for that whole like ingress and vetting process for all the emission factors that we use. And so with this matching, now you're also able to actually, like Chloe's showing here, change the matching that we've provided. So the initial suggestion, you can change it to something else. You can also filter by a particular source. Maybe you can show that, Chloe. Yeah, so if, for example, I only want to use EcoInvent for my PCF, I only want to use carbon mines or any other emission factor data source, AgriBalise, for example, I can choose that here, and then we'll try to find a match looking only at that source. Similarly to the region fallback here, you can specify that, set that to true, and then we'll only look at emission factors from a particular region, for example. So this is things you can do.
And maybe just to follow up, if my supplier comes back to me with an actual emission factor, am I able to use primary data?
Yeah, so this is something that's coming very soon, the ability to, essentially add it right into the flow here. So add a custom or supplier-specific factor and also store and reuse them for your PCF calculation.
Nice. Great. So I've swapped out my emission factor. We'll need to recalculate our PCF because it's essentially stale or out of date now. So let's just dig into a few more of the details here. We have our route, so the automatic routing from the supplier location to my manufacturing site, any further details on waste, and then some data quality indexes. This is packed aligned, so you can really just evaluate the breakdown of, on a transport and component level, how good the match is. So that's some of the data on the component level. Let's quickly go ahead and recalculate our PCF, just that it's up to date. There we go. The emissions changed slightly. So let's see. We also have the same sort of process on the manufacturing level. It's also quite nice here. We can see the priority. So our components have been ordered in terms of priority, which are the most carbon intensive, which have the highest impact. What components do I address first in terms of swapping out to make my product more sustainable? So that's really nice. Similarly, for the manufacturing, we then also have for each of my processes that we inputted earlier, we can also see the exact kilowatt hours associated with that, followed by the emissions with the full emissions breakdown as well, and of course the linked emission factors that supported this calculation and made it all possible. Rounding that off, we also have, of course, always a data quality evaluation. So that's how we handle the mapping here. We also have the same for any fuel consumption and waste components. So coming up soon is also end of life and use phase in terms of the next phases and boundaries. And of course, big question is, how do I now share this with customers? There is very much so an export and share option, both simplified and extended, and coming soon as a packed aligned format. But I will leave that for you as a little taster to try that out when you try the studio, see what that looks like. So we have some results, and I guess now that I have these PCF results, what does this actually mean for me practically as a sustainability manager? Does this get me anywhere in terms of ISO compliance?
Yeah, happy to answer that question, and it's a very good one too, Chloe. So basically, our methodology has been audited against the ISO 14067 and the Greenhouse Gas Protocol product lifecycle standards as well. We are still awaiting the final certification on that, but news so far seems very, very positive. What that means for you is that you can now send off this report to your supplier and say, hey, the calculation that has been performed is compliant with the ISO as well as the Greenhouse Gas Protocol standards, and this serves as a proof of credibility of the calculation being carried out according to, the standard protocols and standard methodologies as well.
Mm-hmm. Well, then there we have it. I went from a bill of materials with gaps, no clear starting points, to really an initial PCF that I can share with my customers today. So, really, no weeks of data prep, no consulting fees, and I really do feel confident that I can keep building on this over time independently. So, I'll stop there and hand back over to Isabella.
Yeah, thanks a lot for showing us that, Chloe. That was really cool. So yeah, just to provide a little bit of a recap here. So like Chloe said, she went from having a bill of material that was not complete, some of the data missing. She did not have that detailed sort of energy data available, and she managed to construct a PCF in under 30 minutes. And it's really that sort of speed and ease of use that we've tried to build into the product to really make the process of calculating PCFs a lot easier, because it means that manufacturers can do this at scale and across their portfolio. So yeah, some of the things, Chloe also asked us, what does this mean for me as a manufacturer? And this means that you can really, deliver results quickly and efficiently. You do not need to spend all of those resources that maybe you thought you needed. You do not need all those things you thought you needed. And you can actually start becoming a supplier that responds quickly, and that becomes key to your customer Scope 3 reporting. And then lastly, also taking the first step towards making PCFs, a competitive advantage for you as a supplier. But yeah, if you're curious about, how can I get started? How can I try this out? I think one of the things we really wanted to show today is just how easy and how fast it can be to calculate a PCF. And so as part of that, we are actually doing a campaign at the moment where we are giving away the 10,000 first PCFs calculated for free across our community. And so if you go to our website, it's fairly easy to find. Go to our website or go to the link here, climatiq.io/product carbon footprints. We will also be sharing that link, of course, after the webinar. You can sign up and get started calculating a PCF. So yeah, hope you do that. And yeah, I think it's time for the Q&A, where Ankita and I will be answering some of your questions. So yeah, Chloe, I'll hand over to you to moderate.
Yes, lots of great questions. Thank you so much. So let's dig straight into them. We have a lovely methodology question about our tool. So we said that it's certified, and the question is, who certified it? Ankita, I'll direct this one to you since you were so involved in the process.
Yes, sure. So we are currently undergoing a certification process and in the last stages of it. And we have a third-party auditor who is carrying out this process. They are called Good Cert, if that is the name that you're looking for. And yeah, hopefully very soon we can also share the wider news of the certification process with all of you as well. Yeah, that is the answer to that question, I guess.
Exciting times. So next up, we have a more AI and feature-related question. Isabella, I'll throw this one your way. We have a question on which AI models do you use for matching and mapping emission factors?
Yeah, so we have actually for in mapping agent for that emission factor matching that we do, we have actually built and are training our own proprietary model for the emission factor mapping. And yeah, we've been working on that for quite some time now, and yeah, we're quite proud of the results, I would say, at this stage.
Nice. Next up, one on sort of our tooling and gaps, but also in relation to accuracy and reporting. So, Ankita, I'll throw this one your way. Question is, I see you can easily fill gaps with the tool slash AI, but what about transparency and auditability? Where do the assumptions come from? What is the original source, and are there hallucinations?
Oh, great question. So the way that we fill gaps are, of course, via LLM models, and I think a lot of whether these gap filling measures make sense to you depends on you as a user. So I think it's also up to a discretionary sort of a process there that, you look at these LLM filled gaps and then make a judgment on whether this really matches your real life processes or not, and then make an assumption based on that. So the gap filling is for you to have a starting point where you can jump off of, and that really provides like a ground for you to then confirm whether this is okay for you to use further in the process.
I suppose that business reality is super important. And Keith, I'll throw another one your way while I have you here. Is it acceptable to use regional average data, for example, Europe, Asia, rather than disclosing the full list of suppliers and their locations?
Ooh, full list of suppliers and their locations. It really depends on what kind of data you have at the end of the day, right? So I think it's absolutely okay to use regional averages if you don't have any better data than what is available. There is this very famous line that we like saying these days in terms of PCFs is um, perfect is the enemy of good. And I think the aim is to have good, credible PCFs that you can start off with and really, really provide sort of evidence to your supplier requests when they come your way. And I think in this case, regional averages are perfectly fine if you don't have any further specifics with relation to your supplier locations.
Yep, makes sense. Isabella, quick one on more commercial and licensing. Does it include access to IEA emission factors?
Yes, so it is possible to have access to IA as well as EcoInvent or Carbon Mines or Sustomize or some of the other premium data sources that we have. However, if you are asking about this sort of campaign we're doing at the moment, providing the first 10,000 PCFs for free, that does not include access to the premium data. So for those PCFs, you can make use of all of our core data sets, which is, we can also share that link after the call. We have that as a specific tab on our data source page, but you'll be able to make use of all the core data sets for your PCF calculations. But if you need IA or EcoInvent or any of those, then yeah, you would need to have a paid subscription.
That's clear on the add-ons then. Quite a complicated next question, one that I often am curious about too in terms of reporting. So, Ankita, I'm going to throw this your way. How should components be accounted for when they are purchased in one country but manufactured in another? Which country should be considered for reporting purposes? The country of purchase or the country of production?
Ooh, also a very interesting question. So if it's being purchased in one country but then manufactured in another, I would always consider the manufacturing location because that provides the most accurate sort of use of the local energy resources, the materials probably, and all other related parameters with relation to that. So of course, I can understand sometimes that it's hard to trace back data to the country of manufacture. And maybe the last point that you have is the country of purchase. Yeah, we make do with what data we have, but as always, dig deep into your supply chains and please do find out where the components were manufactured.
Mm-hmm. Next one on features and product roadmap. Isabella, I'm going to throw this one your way. Is it possible to provide the PCF results in a standardized report that is automatically generated by the tool?
Yeah, so this is interesting question. So this is one of the sort of main features that we are working on and will be releasing pretty soon. At the moment, you can, as Chloe quickly showed in the tool, you can do a sort of an export where you have like all the details that you need. But we are working on also a more of a polished report that will include a few different things that we know are useful to manufacturers who want to share PCFs. So yeah, that is coming. And also as a separate note, we have actually published recently a public roadmap. So it is possible on our website to go and have a look at all the features that we will be launching soon, but also future kind of ideas that we are exploring. You can contact us if you're interested, and you can also submit feature requests. So yeah, in that public roadmap, you will find this PCF report as one of the upcoming things, along with a lot of other exciting things that we're planning for PCF Studio.
Nice. Then next up, question on calculating LCAs. So Isabella, another feature one, I'll throw it your way potentially. Can you calculate LCAs with the tool too?
Yeah. So in terms of this is maybe a question for Ankita, but in terms of sort of the like indicators that we cover and the like scope of the calculation, so we only cover CO2e at the moment, at least. And we don't cover the sort of additional indicators yet that you would need in an LCA. I'll maybe pass over to Ankita actually, and if you want to fill in
Yeah,
on that or
sure.
maybe share a few more details, yeah.
Yeah, sure. No, Isabella correctly mentioned that currently what we do is not a complete LCA. It's only the climate change indicator impacts that we cover, which is basically the kilogram CO2e values that we measure in terms of the carbon impact or carbon footprint of the products. But hey, you never know. So please do stay tuned and keep watching this space.
Nice. Another question on usage of PCFs in terms of targets. And Kita, I might ask you to fill in on this question. So the one here is, what are the uses for the company's clients? Can these PCFs be used in SBTI targets?
Oh yeah, super, super interesting questions, and I think very much outlines why people are creating PCFs in the first place today, right? So I think there's increasing pressure on a lot of the top tier suppliers or the top tier actors in supply chains to really, really set targets, which could be near-term targets in terms of SBTI or even long-term targets. And when they have most of their emissions coming from scope 3, then it becomes very, very pertinent that they then request their their upstream suppliers here to really provide them with credible PCFs that they can then use to set targets and really figure out where hotspots lie in their scope 3 emissions, and then go behind those hotspots and really work with the suppliers together to come up with a plan for decarbonization that can then help them reduce the targets that they've set for themselves and really achieve them over time. So yeah, very important, especially when it comes to setting SBTI targets, or even if companies are not setting targets as per SBTIs. I think it's a very useful resource to have.
Mm-hmm. And next up, I think our viewers are in awe of this, but are the first 10,000 free PCFs actually free with the commercial license? Isabella, you can scream this one out.
Yeah, yeah, it's completely free. Yeah, you can
Yep.
go ahead. You can start calculating them, and yeah, hurry. They're going.
Yep. Next up, a question on AI assistance. So, how does the AI assist in the transport emissions since there's no supplier upstream data given? Either of you can grab this one. It's a free for all. Regarding AI assistance in our transportation.
What would the question mean exactly?
Maybe to dig into it more, just I think that this would pertain to freight and the calculation there instead of sort of mapping agent wouldn't handle that part.
Right. Yeah, exactly. So our we have our freight API, which is designed to handle inputs in terms of, you have your supplier location and you have the manufacturing location, as you had very nicely sort of exhibited already during the demo. And what this basically does is the freight API automatically routes the possible route that it would take from the supplier location to the manufacturing location, depending on what location names you've entered within the PCF itself, and it calculates emissions based on that. Of course, you can also change the transport route there. So on the PCF demo, it was set to auto, which means Freight API automatically calculates this in the background, determines the best route possible from these between these two locations. But of course, if you want to override that, you can also specify the transport mode that you think was the most dominant one in your route process. And that's basically how the Freight API works. Yeah, that's one of our smart API features, very capable, very widely used as well. And in this case, saves you a lot of trouble in trying to figure out the exact route, because sometimes you just don't know. And that really is solving a big pain point for a lot of our users.
And also
Absolutely.
calculated in accordance with the GLEC framework, or it's based on
Yeah.
the GLEC framework and ISO standard for freight.
Precisely.
Calculation.
That's a good thing that you pointed out, Isabella. We also have the latest GLEC 3.2 version that we've been certified against, and yeah.
Yep. And the Smart Freight Center. So perfect. Just being mindful of time. There were so many questions. Thank you so much. We won't have a chance to answer all of them, but please feel free to reach out to us if you have any questions that you would like answered. Otherwise, we want to thank you so much for your time. We really appreciate you attending. Test PCF Studio while it is free. Head over to climatic.io. You'll see lots of PCF Studio buttons. Follow along. Use those 10,000 free PCFs.